Kevin in Boston, Massachusetts. I can't do it. Is vertical biamping worth it? You know, Paul, I've been experimenting with biamping, and right now I've got a pair of identical stereo amps running in what's called a vertical biamp configuration, 1 amp for each speaker, with one channel handling the woofer and the other the tweeter. It sounds good, but I can't help wondering, am I really gaining anything here compared to horizontal setup where 1 amp handles the highs for both channels and the other one does the lows? Is vertical biamping genuinely better in terms of imaging dynamics or channel separation, or is it just different? Whew. You know, first off, let me just say that biamping is something that years ago was a pretty important aspect to what we do. It was almost necessary, and the reason is because the amps back then were kind of inadequate. Let's just put it that way. They really didn't live up to what they could have with more modern designs. So I don't recommend biamping at all anymore. I recommend monoblock amplifiers, and I think that 1 amp per channel, and make sure it's a good modern amp, is the best way to go. All right. But having said all of that, let's talk about your question. So what Kevin is doing is taking a stereo amplifier, 1 stereo amp per channel, and putting the left channel, let's say, into the woofer and the right channel into the tweeter. I think that's a fine way of doing it, because in a stereo amp they have a common power supply that drives both the left and the right channel, and your tweeter is using 10 watts, 15, I mean almost nothing. So your entire power supply is going into where it's needed, right, into the left channel on both of them. If you did it the other way around, where you took 1 amplifier and you ran the woofers on that 1 amp and the tweeters on the other, I think you would wind up being at a disadvantage in this scenario for obvious reasons, because in the vertical biamping you're using all of the power supply of a stereo amp for 1 channel, and then all of the power supply for the other stereo amp in the other channel. That's probably the best way. Now you're like a monoblock amplifier, and all you've added is a separate amp for the tweeter. Again, modern amplifiers don't really require that, and I don't know how much of a benefit it is. But if you have to choose between horizontal and vertical biamping, that would always be, vertical would always be better than horizontal. Last thing I'll say, back in the day when we actually kind of had to do biamping, one of the tricks that we did is we chose different kinds of amplifiers for the different jobs. So you'd want a beefy phase linear 400 amplifier for the woofers. Now that had kind of a bright top end, hard, bright, kind of not a great top end. And there were tube amps, 10 watt, 15 watt, 2 watt tube amplifiers that were sweet as honey on the top end but sucked on the bass. That was a good combination. You get the sweet honey sound for the tweeter, and you get the woof woof boom of that phase linear amplifier on the bottom end, and that was sweet. Problems that you ran into, they were at different gains, so you had to be able to adjust them, and all that kind of good stuff. But that was really the trick behind biamping way back when. So, all right, Kevin, thanks. Take it easy.